Well, hello out there. It's Blue here at Blue Bears Games. As I said last week, we're doing our, you know, 8 decks in 8 weeks. Blues Budget Battle Brew. It's a $20 budget deck series for the events that I do and to sell online. This week we're going to do actually a new build. The past couple weeks have been rehashes of old builds that I didn't update the videos for. This week is actually a brand new build. It's kind of similar to a Goblin deck, but we're doing Red Deck Wins. So Red Deck Wins is kind of like a theory. You can do Red Goblins Wins, which is basically a Goblin deck. This one is a little different than a Goblin deck, though. You don't get the thematic theory, the thematic Goblin thing going on, but it's similar but a little different. So the strategy for a Red Deck Wins is to cast a lot of low mana value or low mana costing dudes with higher power than their actual cost, and then swing away and then use burn to finish the game out as quickly as possible. These decks, Red Deck Wins strategy is more like you got to win by like turn 4 or 5, or you're probably going to lose. So let me go over the strategy. I'll show you how I built it. So low mana value for high, not high, but higher than its actual cost, power, toughness. Now, it's only a 1/2, but it's the ability that makes this guy really special. So as long as there are 2 or more instants of sorcery cards in your graveyard, he gets +1/+0 in haste. So when you cast him at a later turn, he'll have haste and be at 2/2 for 1. So, and that's the theory of this deck. So it's going to be low cost, low mana value, and then it's going to end up being at least double the power for their mana value. So I got 4 of them in there to start us off. And here's another example, a 1 to cast 2/2. They all have disabilities of some sort. This one says it can't attack or block alone. However, if you have a get to Lava Runner out already, it's not going to be attacking alone anyway. You can actually cast the familiar. No, I'll show you. Never mind. I'll get into it. Jackal Familiar, got 4 of them in there. Zergo Bell Striker. So again, a 1 to cast 2/2, as you can see. So low mana value for, I don't want to say the word high power toughness. For the mana cost, high power toughness. It can't block creatures with power 2 or greater. Who cares? You're only going to be attacking. And it has this cool ability, Dash. Dash just basically means you can pay the dash cost, put it into play, attacking with haste, and then return it to your hand. So the reason why this and this work is by turn 3, I mean, there's other ways to do it, but I'm just going to give you an example. It's not the greatest example, but you dash him into play after you've played him. So turn 1, Jackal Familiar. Turn 2, Dash, Zergo Bell Striker. Now they're both attacking, and you've got 4 power on turn 2 attacking. It's not bad. It's not the greatest, but it's not horrible on turn 2. 4 damage is actually quite good. Anyway, Grim Lavamancer, so 1 to cast for a 1/1. It's actually not... It seems odd to have this in there, but there are a lot of instants and sorcerers in this deck, and you want to be able to use them for more damage later. So for 1 and tapping it, you can exile 2 cards from your graveyard, and it'll deal 2 damage to any target, so you can throw more fire at your opponent's dome, as you say. Kiln Fiend is one of my favorite cards recently. They make a couple different iterations of a Kiln Fiend, but Kiln Fiend seems to be the best. So it's a 2 to cast 1/2, and then whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it gets +3/+0 until the turn. So it would be a 4/2, and then a 7/2, and then a 10/2. Get what I'm saying? Got 4 of them in there. Here's the other example of it. Again, not as good as Kiln Fiend, but pretty close. So it's 2 to cast for a 1/3. Only it has Trample now. So Kiln Fiend doesn't have Trample. That's the only downside to it. So this one has a bigger butt, has Trample in it, but its bonus whenever you cast an instant or sorcery is only +1/+0. So it's a trade-off. Do you want to go real big, or do you want to go more safe? 4 of them in there. Viashino Pyromancer. So this deck is all about getting as much damage as quickly as possible. 2 to cast, 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, deals 2 damage to target player or planeswalker. So throwing more damage at your opponent than they can handle is kind of what the idea is here. Ball Lightning, 3 to cast, 6/1. This is as old as almost Magic. I mean, it came out in the dark all the way back in 95, I think it was, 4 or 5. 3 to cast, 6/1, Trample Haste, and then you sacrifice it in turn. It's basically 3 mana for, at minimum, I'm probably going to say 3 damage at that point. That's probably what you're going to get out of it. So because it's kind of similar to Ball Lightning. It's a 4 to cast, 5/3, has a kicker of a red. It has Trample and Haste just like the Ball Lightning. But if you pay the kicker cost, it gets to stick around. So a little bit more mana, but it gets to stick around if you pay it. And then here's where it gets really fun. So a lot of burn. So your whole idea here is that your burn should help your creatures, not just by killing your opponent's creatures or by slowly draining your opponent's life total, but it should. I mean, the Lava Runner benefits, the Kiln Fiend benefits, and the Fire Urchin benefit from this. So Jocks, you want them as low cost mana value as you can. And remember, on a budget, it's a $20 budget deck. So some of the cards that you really want to play, if you're trying to make the deck cheap, you have to use budget versions. So Shocks, Flame Burst. This is one that I don't see used anymore just because it's so old. They need to reprint it. So it's 2 to cast. It deals X damage to our creature. creature or player, so any target, where X is 2, plus the number of flame bursts in all graveyards. So if there's 1 in your graveyard, it's 3. If there's 2 in your graveyard, it's 4. And if there's, so on and so on. And the reason why I say so on is because there is a card from this set that counts as a flame burst in the graveyard. It's not in this deck because it doesn't help this deck, but it does happen to matter. Got 4 of them bad boys. Got some incinerates in here. So 2 to cast, instants that deal 3 damage to any target. And if it hits a creature and they die, they can't be regenerated. I'm sorry. That's the other one. That's, I forget what that one is. That's the other one. The creature's damage by incinerate can't be regenerated, which doesn't really matter in this day and age. And Flame Spill. It's 3 to cast for an instant that deals 4 damage to a creature. And then excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. So if you use Flame Spill and deal and hit something with 1 toughness, 3 of that damage will hit its controller. This is one of my favorite new things that they've done. I know that it started off in one of the unsets, but it's actually not bad. I don't understand why that wasn't a thing before. Got 2 of them. And Throw a Possibility is something I throw in every red deck now because every deck needs fuel. Fuel means cards. When you run out of cards, you run out of fuel, your deck stalls. Throw a Possibility kind of helps that. So you can draw 2 cards. I understand that you have to discard a card to do it, but most people have an extra land in their hand. If you're playing smart, you don't play all your lands, especially in a deck that doesn't need more than 3 in play. So you can Throw a Possibility, discard the land, draw 2 fresh new cards, hopefully fuel. That's what they're in there for. And then the rest is mountains. 20 good old mountains to go with it. And that's a very, very simplified version of a red deck wins. It's not goblins. Goblins are a little different. I mean, I understand the theory is the same, but it does it in a different way. So you got the strategy down. You see what the deck does. Some of the upgrades that you can go. So there are a couple creatures that you can add. And I understand that I'm going to say this. It's going to sound, contradictory to what I just said. But there is a goblin that you can use in this deck that doesn't really count as goblins. It doesn't really afford goblins, but you can use it in this deck and would afford it, which is Goblin Guide. 1 to cast, 2/2, and then whenever, it hits somebody, they can look at something, blah, 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 and put a land into play. I'll have it up there. But it's not a goblin it's not a goblin per se. It's a red deck wins type of goblin. Monastery Swift Spear is a really good card. They just reprinted it in Double Masters 22. And they put it as downshifted it to common. So I don't have very many yet because I didn't open a lot of my Double Masters. I only got 2 boxes. I only opened 1. I didn't get really a lot of good stuff out of it. But it's a good addition here. And then Eidolon of Great Revel. I'll mention it because a lot of people play it in a deck like this. I personally don't like it. For me, it's all about the Monastery Swift Spear and the Goblin Guide. But you can add the Eidolon of Great Revels. I'll have it up there. I don't like the downfall to it because all of your stuff only costs 1 or 2 anyway, too, so I don't really like that. As far as the burn, I mentioned that there are better options for the burn. There are. Monetarily speaking, they're much higher price. So instead of shocks, you can put in lightning bolts, but they're like $2 to $3 a piece. So if you put 4 of them in here, that bumps up the price tag to $8 more, and who wants to pay that for a common? Lava Spikes are a good one, so you can just throw fire at the dome of your opponent. 1 to cast, 3 damage to your opponent. Adds, puts stuff in your graveyard or cast instants and sorceries, which your creatures want anyway, so all good stuff. Or Searing Blaze is a good one. You have extra land drops you're going to have. Land drops aren't really that big of a thing in this deck. Most of your stuff is so cheap that as long as you open your hand with 2 in your hand, at least it makes land drops relevant later. When you don't need them, it helps add something to them being played. And I don't know if I explained that correctly, but like when you've gotten past 3 lands, the land drops don't really matter. So drawing a land becomes, I don't know, a problem later in the game for a deck like this, but at least Searing Blaze would help make it less of a pain to draw land. That's the best I can do. And as far as lands go, we're in mono red. There's not really much that you can do unless you want to like add another color to this deck. And when I say that, I'm basically talking about white. And I know that sounds weird to add white to a red deck wins deck, but like Boros Charm and Lightning Helix are really nasty cards for a deck like this. I mean, they just really make this deck shine. So while this is red deck wins, you can do Boros deck wins. And then you're talking about adding, some dual lands that don't come into play tapped and all this stuff. But adding white to this deck, would really ramp this deck up a lot more. They're expensive cards, though. Boros Charm, I think, is a $3 uncommon. And Lightning Helix, it was just reprinted in Double Masters 2022. But before that, it was like $1.50 or $2 uncommon. And for uncommons, that's kind of high. So those are some of the upgrades you can do for this deck. This deck is not my cup of tea. I don't really like doing just turn dude sideways and go burr kind of things. I'm more of a blue player, but this deck is fun for a lot of people. They really like it, and it's actually not a bad version of it. So, especially at $20. So, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always contact me. You got the Facebook page, you got my email, bluebearsgames@gmail.com, or you've got the comment section below if you want to do it. Share this out. I'm sorry. Please do me the favor of liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing this out to somebody who's looking to build a deck like this, looking to start out and doesn't know what to do, wants to learn how to build decks. You know, there's a lot of reasons that you can share this out to somebody that may want to learn how to build decks or play something like this, or if they want to purchase the deck. It's a $20 budget deck. Everybody knows that I do that now. And you can contact me if you want to purchase it. Other than that, that's the time for the week. I will see you all next week. Have a good one.